Too late to fix it. The Council watches as humanity walks away. Part 1. The Breaking Point. The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep rumble that echoed through the vast hall. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked forward with steady steps, her black diplomatic uniform sharp against the colorful alien delegates that filled the circular chamber. Her face showed no emotion, but her dark eyes held something that made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. For 30 years, humans had sat at the small table reserved for junior species. They had listened to debates about their future without being allowed to vote. They had watched their colony applications get rejected, while less advanced species received approval. They had accepted trade deals that favored everyone except humanity. Today felt different. The chamber itself was designed to intimidate. 12 towering seats arranged in a circle, each one built for the dominant species of the galaxy. The Karathi Empire held the center position, their reptilian forms draped in ceremonial robes that sparkled with embedded gems. To their right sat the crystalline beings of the Vex Collective, their bodies refracting light in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. The peaceful Dendari occupied a smaller seat, their tree-like forms swaying gently even in the still air of the chamber. Around the circle sat representatives from the hive mind, the Aquatic Consortium, the Machine Collective, and 6 other species that controlled vast territories across the galaxy. At the very bottom of the chamber, almost like an afterthought, sat the human observer table. Elena had occupied that table for 5 years now. She had watched as her proposals were dismissed with barely a glance. She had seen human colonies struggle with resource shortages, while alien worlds received unlimited support. She had listened to speeches about galactic unity, while humans were excluded from every meaningful decision. Speaker Thane Corvanus rose from his position at the center of the council. His 7-foot frame was covered in dark green scales that caught the chamber's artificial light. His yellow eyes fixed on Elena as he spoke in the deep, commanding voice that had dominated council sessions for decades. The matter before us today concerns human expansion into the Outer Rim territories, Corvanus announced. Intelligence reports suggest that human colonies have been established beyond approved boundaries. This council must decide on appropriate restrictions. Helena felt her jaw tighten but kept her expression neutral. The human colonies in question were barely 20 light-years beyond the boundary lines. They were on dead worlds that no other species wanted. Humans had terraformed them with their own technology, built cities with their own hands, and created thriving communities without asking for help from anyone. Council member Zephyr of the Vex Collective spoke next, their crystalline voice ringing like wind chimes. Humans have repeatedly shown disregard for established protocols. These unauthorized expansions threaten regional stability. The colonies pose no threat to any established territories, Elena said, standing from her observer position. They exist on worlds that were deemed worthless by this council's own surveys. That is not the point, Corvanus replied with a dismissive wave of his clawed hand. Rules exist for the benefit of all species. Humanity cannot be allowed to ignore them simply because the territories seem empty. Elena looked around the chamber. She saw the same expressions she had grown to know so well over the years. Boredom from some delegates, mild irritation from others. A few species representatives were not even paying attention, busy with their own data tablets or engaged in whispered conversations. None of them took humanity seriously. They never had. I have a proposal, Elena said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber despite its normal tone. Several delegates looked up with surprise. Humans were not supposed to make proposals during council sessions. They were observers, nothing more. Corvanus frowned. You may speak, but this council is not bound to consider suggestions from non-voting members. Elena reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small data tablet. She held it up so all the delegates could see it. This contains a complete inventory of all goods and services that human colonies currently provide to council worlds, she said. Medical supplies that keep your populations healthy, rare earth elements that power your technology, food crops that prevent famine on 17 different worlds, manufacturing components that keep your industries running. A few delegates leaned forward with interest. Most continued to look bored. Impressive, Corvanus said with obvious sarcasm. Humanity has made itself useful. This is exactly why the current system works so well. You provide what we need and we provide protection and guidance in return. Elena smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It was not a friendly smile. "You misunderstand," she said. "This is not a list of what we provide. This is a list of what we will stop providing." The chamber fell silent. Even the delegates who had not been paying attention looked up from their tablets. "What exactly are you suggesting?" asked Ambassador Mira of the Dendari, her wooden features creaking as she spoke. Elena placed the tablet on the podium in front of her. "I am formally announcing humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Trade Consortium, the Mutual Defense Pact, and all Council-mediated agreements. Effective immediately, all human colonies will cease shipping critical resources to Council worlds." The silence lasted for exactly 3 seconds. Then the chamber erupted. Delegates jumped to their feet, their various forms of communication creating a chaos of sound. The insectoid hive mind representative began clicking rapidly in alarm. The Aquatic Consortium member's translation device started sparking from overuse. Shouts in dozens of languages filled the air. Corvinus slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor, the sound booming through speakers built into the chamber walls. "Order, I demand order!" It took several minutes for the noise to die down. When it did, Corvinus fixed Elena with a stare that would have melted steel. "You cannot be serious," he said. "Humanity depends on Council protection and trade networks. This would be economic suicide for your species." Elena gathered her papers and placed them back in her briefcase. "Speaker Corvinus, you have just demonstrated exactly why this decision was necessary. You still think of humanity as dependent children who cannot survive without your guidance." She began walking toward the chamber exit. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet. "You need us more than we need you," Corvinus called after her. "Your colonies will fail without Council support. Your trade routes will collapse. Your people will suffer, and you will come crawling back within a year." Elena stopped at the chamber doors and turned around one last time. Every delegate in the room was staring at her. 30 years ago, humanity joined this council hoping for partnership and cooperation. Instead, we found condescension and control. You have treated us like servants while taking credit for our achievements. You have restricted our growth while benefiting from our innovations. You have dismissed our concerns while profiting from our resources. Her voice remained calm, but it carried to every corner of the chamber. Today that ends. Humanity chooses to chart its own course among the stars. We thank the Council for the valuable lesson in self-reliance. Elena walked through the doors without looking back. Behind her, the chamber exploded into arguments and shouting once again. But she no longer cared what they had to say. Outside in the corridor, her assistant, James Mitchell, was waiting with a secure communication device. "How did it go?" he asked. Elena took the device and activated it. "Send the message to all human colonies in Earth Command. Operation Exodus is now active." Within hours, cargo ships throughout Council space began receiving cancellation notices. Trade agreements that had existed for decades were terminated. Resource shipments that kept entire worlds running came to a sudden stop. The Galactic Council had finally pushed humanity too far. Now they would learn what the galaxy looked like without human cooperation. Too late to fix it, the Council watches as humanity walks away. Part 2. The Ripple Effect. 3 months had passed since Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked out of the Galactic Council chamber. 3 months since humanity had severed all ties with the galactic government that had ruled the known galaxy for over 3,000 years. At first, many council members had laughed. Humans were known for their emotional outbursts, after all. They would cool down, realize their mistake, and come back to negotiate better terms. It was simply a matter of waiting them out. Nobody was laughing anymore. Factory Supervisor Zelm Korvac stood in the middle of Production Bay 7 on the industrial world of Kithara, watching millions of credits worth of quantum processors sit unfinished on the assembly lines. His forearms hung at his sides in defeat as he stared at the idle machinery. "How long until the next shipment arrives?" asked his assistant, a young Karathi named Brix who had only recently been promoted to the position. "There is no next shipment," Zelm replied, his voice hollow. "The humans have stopped mining the rare earth elements we need. The alternative sources will take 3 years to develop and will cost 5 times as much." Brix looked confused. "But surely other species can provide the same materials." Zelm activated a holographic display that showed the mineral composition they needed. "These elements exist on exactly 17 worlds in Council space. Humans control mining operations on 14 of them. The other 3 are controlled by species that are demanding tribute payments we cannot afford. The factory employed over 50,000 workers across 12 different species. It produced the quantum processing units that powered everything from personal communication devices to starship navigation systems. Now it sat silent, its workers sent home indefinitely. Kithra was not alone in its suffering. On the medical research station orbiting Vex Prime, Dr. Linnea Christek discovered that their stockpiles of human-synthesized antibiotics were running dangerously low. She stood in the cold storage facility, counting vials with growing desperation. "How many patients are currently receiving treatment?" she asked her research assistant. 4,000 across 17 different species, came the reply. "The infection rates are climbing on 6 worlds, and we have enough medicine for maybe 2 more weeks." Dr. Christek had spent the last month trying to recreate the human formulas. The antibiotics were not particularly complex by galactic standards, but they had been specifically designed to work across multiple alien biologies. The humans had spent decades testing and perfecting the compounds, sharing their research freely with Council medical facilities. Nobody had bothered to learn how to make them. Why would they?
Humans would always be available to produce whatever was needed. Can we contact human medical facilities directly?
The assistant asked. "I tried," Dr. Christek said. "They are not responding to any communications from Council-affiliated organizations. They have completely cut us off." Similar conversations were happening across hundreds of worlds throughout Council space. In the Council chamber itself, Speaker Corvanus was discovering just how much the galactic government had depended on human contributions. Intelligence Director Pava Sylvian stood before the emergency session, delivering a report that grew more devastating with each page. "Food shortages are beginning on 12 agricultural worlds," she reported. "The specialized crop strains developed by human botanists cannot be replicated quickly. Several worlds are facing complete harvest failures. What about our own agricultural experts?" asked Councilmember Zephyr. "They are trying, but the human innovations were far more advanced than we realized. They had developed plants that could grow in alien soils, resist native diseases, and produce higher yields than anything we had before. Our scientists estimate it will take 5 to 10 years to develop replacements." Corvanus felt a cold sensation in his stomach. "Continue the report. Communication delays are increasing across the outer territories. The quantum relay stations require maintenance components that were exclusively produced in human manufacturing facilities. Without repairs, we are losing contact with remote colonies. Trade routes are collapsing as human freight companies withdraw their services. They handled nearly 40% of all intersystem cargo transport. Other shipping companies are raising their prices by 300% to handle the increased demand. Military supply lines are affected. Human colonies provided specialized alloys for starship construction, power cells for defensive systems, and strategic minerals for weapons manufacturing. Each item on the list hit the Council like a physical blow. For decades, they had grown accustomed to human efficiency and reliability. When something was needed, humans found a way to provide it. When a problem arose, human engineers developed a solution. When resources were required, human colonies delivered them on schedule. All of that was gone now. Admiral Rex Dracon of the Karathi Defense Fleet shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Perhaps a show of force would bring them back to negotiations. A few military demonstrations near their outer colonies might remind them of their place. Intelligence Director Sylvian shook her head. "I would strongly advise against that course of action." "Why?" Corvanus demanded. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual activity in human space. New ship designs that do not match any known human technology. Energy signatures that suggest significant technological advancement. Most concerning, there are indications that humans have made contact with civilizations outside Council space." The chamber fell silent. Contact with unknown civilizations was supposed to be managed exclusively through Council protocols. Independent first contact was strictly forbidden for all member species. Of course, humans were no longer members. "How advanced are these unknown civilizations?" asked Ambassador Mira of the Dendery. "We do not know," Sylvian admitted. "But our sensors indicate that some of the new ships in human space are significantly more advanced than anything in the Council fleet." Council member Thox of the Hive Mind began clicking rapidly in agitation. "This changes everything. If humans have allied themselves with powerful unknown species, Military action becomes extremely dangerous. Corvinus stood and began pacing behind his seat.
How did this happen?
How did we miss the signs that humanity was preparing to leave? We did not miss the signs, said Economic Minister Dava Thornwick quietly. We ignored them. For years, human representatives warned us about growing dissatisfaction in their colonies. They requested better trade terms, expanded territorial rights, and voting representation in council decisions. We dismissed every request as juvenile complaints from an immature species. While we were debating the proper way to manage human expansion, Thornwick continued, they were building the infrastructure to survive without us. While we were arguing about appropriate restrictions on their growth, they were developing technologies we had never seen before. While we were treating them like children, they were growing into something we no longer recognize. The economic minister activated a holographic display showing trade flow data from the past 3 months. In 12 weeks, humanity has gone from a dependent junior member to a completely independent civilization. Not only are they surviving without council support, they are thriving. Impossible, Corvinus said. They must be bluffing. No species can transform their entire economic and military structure in 3 months. They did not transform it in 3 months, Sylvian said quietly. They transformed it over 30 years while we were not paying attention. They have been preparing for this moment since the day they joined the council. The implications were staggering. Humanity had never intended to remain junior partners forever. They had been planning, building, and preparing for the day they would no longer need council protection or approval. That day had arrived. Outside the council chamber, emergency meetings were being held in every major government building across council space. Economic advisors scrambled to find replacement suppliers for critical resources. Military leaders tried to assess the new threat level posed by humanity and their unknown allies. Medical facilities rationed their remaining stocks of human-produced medicines. 3 months ago, humans had been dismissed as emotional children who would never survive on their own. Now they were beginning to look like the most dangerous opponents the Galactic Council had ever faced. Too late to fix it. The Council watches as humanity walks. Awascom Part 3, the new Alliance Captain Marcus Torres, stood on the bridge of the human exploration vessel, Horizon's Edge, as it emerged from hyperspace near the edge of what used to be called Council territory. Behind him, in the ship's diplomatic quarters, representatives from 3 alien civilizations that the Galactic Council had never heard of prepared for their first glimpse of the local galaxy. The ship itself would have been unrecognizable to anyone familiar with human technology from just a year ago. Its hull gleamed with exotic metals that seemed to shift color in the starlight. Energy fields flickered around its surface like aurora lights, providing protection that made traditional armor obsolete. Most impressive of all, it was 3 times larger than the biggest ships humanity had ever built before. Approaching the observation deck, announced Lieutenant Sarah Kim from her position at the navigation console. Our guests should have a clear view of council space from here. Marcus nodded and activated his communicator. Ambassador Katara, Dr. Petrov, would you and your delegation please join us on the bridge? Within minutes, the bridge filled with beings that would have caused panic in the Galactic Council chamber. Ambassador Katara of the Spiral Federation appeared to be made of pure energy, her form shifting between solid matter and brilliant light as she moved. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. So these are the council worlds that dismissed humanity as primitive, she said, observing the star systems displayed on the main view screen. How quaint. Standing beside her was Commander Vorthan of the Forge Collective, a being that looked like it had been carved from living metal. His species had mastered the art of manipulating matter at the atomic level, allowing them to reshape reality itself with their technology. The ship they now rode in had been built using forge techniques that could create materials stronger than anything the Council had ever imagined. The third representative was Admiral Nexus of the Nomad Swarms, whose species had spread across multiple galaxies by dividing into countless smaller groups. Her people numbered in the trillions and commanded fleets so vast that they could darken entire star systems when they moved together. Dr. Ivan Petrov, humanity's chief diplomatic scientist, stepped forward to address the alien delegates. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what the Galactic Council considers to be the center of known civilization. As you can see, it represents approximately 0.3% of our galaxy's inhabitable space. Commander Vorthon's metallic features shifted in what might have been amusement. And they believed themselves to be the supreme authority over all intelligent life? For over 3,000 years, Marcus confirmed. Until recently, most local species accepted their authority without question. Humans were among the last to join their organization, and apparently the first to leave. Ambassador Katara phased partially out of existence as she processed this information. Your species has an interesting approach to problem-solving, Captain Torres. Rather than waste time arguing with those who refuse to listen, you simply found better partners. That was exactly what humanity had done. While the Galactic Council had spent decades debating appropriate restrictions on human expansion, human explorers had been pushing deeper into unexplored space. They had made first contact with the Spiral Federation in a nebula that Council scientists had declared uninhabitable. They had discovered the Forge Collective building massive structures around stars that Council surveys had never even detected. They had encountered the nomad swarms in the space between galaxies, where Council ships had never dared to venture. Each new civilization had been amazed to discover that humans were considered a junior species by their local government. The Spiral Federation, whose energy-based technology could manipulate time and space, found human engineering to be refreshingly direct and practical. The Forge Collective, whose matter manipulation abilities bordered on magic, appreciated human creativity and adaptability. The nomad swarms, whose vast numbers could overwhelm any opponent, admired human determination and courage. None of these civilizations had any respect for Galactic Council authority. In fact, most of them found the Council's claims to galactic leadership to be genuinely amusing. Dr. Petrov, Admiral Nexus said, her multiple voices speaking in perfect harmony. You mentioned that your former associates are experiencing supply difficulties since your departure. How are they adapting? Ivan smiled grimly. Not well, I'm afraid. It appears that humanity had become far more integrated into Council operations than anyone realized. We provided critical resources, manufactured essential components, and maintained key infrastructure across hundreds of worlds. Without our contributions, their economy is beginning to collapse. And their military response? Commander Vorthon asked. They have been remarkably restrained, Marcus replied. Council military doctrine is based on overwhelming force applied against technologically inferior opponents. They are not prepared to face enemies who might actually fight back. This was true. The Galactic Council military had not fought a real war in over a century. They maintained order through the threat of force rather than actual combat. Their ships were designed for intimidation and crowd control, not for battles against equal opponents. Meanwhile, humanity's new allies possessed military capabilities that made Council forces look like museum pieces. Spiral Federation ships could phase in and out of normal space, making them nearly impossible to target. Forge Collective vessels could rebuild themselves during combat, regenerating from almost any damage. Nomad swarm fleets operated in formations so large that they could surround entire solar systems. What about other Council species? Katara asked. Surely some of them recognize the changing situation. Ivan activated a holographic display showing intelligence reports from across Council space. Several species are already reaching out through unofficial channels. The Dendari have formally requested discussions about joining our new trade network. 3 minor species have applied for protection agreements with human colonies. Even some Karathi military commanders are privately expressing doubts about their government's policies. The truth was that humanity's departure had revealed just how unstable the Galactic Council really was. For 3,000 years, they had maintained control through a combination of technological superiority and economic dependence. Now that humanity had demonstrated that alternatives existed, other species were beginning to question why they had accepted Council authority for so long. Back on Earth, President Maria Santos was reviewing similar reports in her office overlooking the rebuilt city of Geneva. Defense Secretary Jake Morrison sat across from her, displaying tactical assessments on his tablet. How many Council worlds have requested direct negotiations with human colonies? She asked. 47 as of this morning, Jake replied. Most of them are asking about access to our new trade routes. Some are requesting military protection from Council retaliation. President Santos leaned back in her chair. The Council still thinks this is about hurt feelings and wounded pride. They believe we left because they did not treat us with sufficient respect. They do not understand that we outgrew them, Jake agreed. While they were debating our limitations, we were building relationships with civilizations they never knew existed. While they were restricting our expansion, we were developing technologies that make their achievements look primitive. The president stood and walked to the window, looking out at the skyline of New Geneva. The city had been rebuilt using forged collective techniques that allowed buildings to reshape themselves based on need. Spiral Federation energy networks provided power that was both unlimited and completely clean. Nomad swarm communication systems allowed instant contact with human colonies scattered across multiple galaxies. "Schedule a meeting with the full cabinet," she said. "It is time to formalize our new government structure. The Terran Commonwealth will need proper institutions if we are going to manage relationships with our new allies." The Terran Commonwealth. That was what they were calling it now. Not the human colonies, not the former council members, but an entirely new type of civilization, based on voluntary cooperation between species that actually respected each other. Within 6 months of leaving the Galactic Council, humanity had gone from being a restricted, junior member to being the founding species of what was rapidly becoming the most powerful alliance in the known galaxy. The Council was beginning to realize that they had not lost a subordinate species. They had created a rival superpower. That too late to fix it. The Council watches as humanity walks away. Part 4. The Awakening. The Galactic Council chamber that had once buzzed with confident authority now felt like a tomb. The emergency session had been called after economic reports showed that 17 worlds were facing complete societal collapse within the next 6 months. The marble floors that had witnessed 3,000 years of galactic governance now echoed with the footsteps of desperate delegates scrambling to save their civilization. Speaker Thane Corvanus looked older than his 400 years as he reviewed the catastrophic data streaming across his personal display. His scaled hand shook slightly as he turned each page, the numbers growing worse with every report. What had started as minor supply disruptions had snowballed into the worst crisis in Council history. Economic Minister Dava Thornwick stood at the center of the chamber, her usually confident voice now strained with exhaustion. Trade revenue is down by 68% across all sectors. Critical supply shortages have been reported on 112 worlds. 43 star systems are requesting emergency aid shipments that we cannot provide. How is this possible? Demanded Council Member Zephyr of the Vex Collective, their crystalline form flickering with agitation. Humans represented less than 5% of Council membership. How could their departure cause this level of damage? Thornwick activated a holographic display that filled the chamber with economic flowcharts. Because humans were not just 5% of our membership, they were integrated into every aspect of our economy. They provided 80% of the rare earth elements used in our technology. 60% of our medical supplies came from human laboratories. They manufactured 40% of the components used in our communication networks. The display shifted to show trade route maps. Human shipping companies handled cargo transport for nearly half of all intersystem commerce. When they withdrew their services, other companies could not handle the increased volume. Shipping costs have increased by 400% in some sectors. Council member Thox of the Hive Mind began clicking in rapid distress patterns. "We supported your policies, Corvanus. You assured us that humans would return within weeks, begging for readmission to Council protection." "That was the logical assumption," Corvanus replied defensively. No species had ever survived independence from Council oversight. Historical precedent suggested that humans would face immediate economic collapse and return to negotiations. Ambassador Mira of the Dendari swayed her wooden form slowly as she spoke. "I warned you 9 months ago that humans were different. I told this council that humanity would not bluff about leaving. You dismissed my concerns as sympathy for a fellow junior species. The Dendari had been the only species to abstain from the vote that triggered humanity's departure. They had tried to warn the council that humans were more resilient and independent than other species, but their words had been ignored. Intelligence. Reports reveal that our assumptions about human capabilities were completely wrong," continued Intelligence Director Pava Sylvian as she took her place at the center of the chamber. "We believed humans were dependent on council technology and protection. In reality, they had been secretly developing advanced technologies for decades." She activated a new display showing reconnaissance data from human space. Human colonies now anchor a trade network that spans 4 galaxy arms. Their cargo ships use propulsion systems that are 50% more efficient than our best designs. Their manufacturing facilities produce goods at rates that exceed our projections by orders of magnitude. What about their military capabilities? Asked Admiral Rex Dracon. Sylvian's expression grew grim. Extremely concerning. Human fleet strength has increased by at least 800% since their departure. Their ships utilize technologies we do not recognize. Most disturbing, they appear to have formed military alliances with unknown civilizations whose capabilities far exceed our own. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this information. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained order through military superiority. The idea that humans might now possess greater firepower was terrifying. A direct military confrontation would be inadvisable, General Yaron Volstock of the Council Military Forces said quietly. Our battle simulations suggest that current human capabilities would make any aggressive action extremely costly. Are you telling me that humans have become a military threat to the entire Galactic Council? Corvanus asked incredulously. I am telling you that humans are no longer the weak junior species we remember, Volstock replied. They have allies, resources, and technologies that make them dangerous opponents. More importantly, they have no reason to show mercy to a government that treated them as servants for 30 years. Economic Minister Thornwick cleared her throat. The military situation may be irrelevant. Economic analysis suggests that Council civilization will collapse within 2 years, even without external pressure. We simply cannot maintain our current society without the resources and services that humans provided. She gestured to a new display showing population statistics. Food production has dropped by 40% on agricultural worlds that depended on human crop technologies. Medical treatment facilities are closing due to lack of supplies. Manufacturing centers are shutting down because they cannot obtain necessary materials. How many Council worlds have attempted to negotiate directly with human colonies? Asked Council Member Vex. 79 at last count, Sylvian reported. Most are offering significant concessions in exchange for resumed trade relationships. Several have formally requested to leave Council oversight and join the human trade network. This was the most shocking development of all. Species that had been loyal Council members for centuries were now abandoning their government to seek better relationships with humanity. The Council's authority was not just being challenged. It was being completely ignored. What are our options? Corvanus asked desperately. Thornwick reviewed her data one more time before responding. Capitulation or collapse. We can attempt to negotiate terms for reconciliation with humanity, or we can maintain our current policies and watch Council civilization disintegrate over the next 18 months. Surely, humans would be willing to negotiate, said Council Member Aqua. They are a reasonable species. If we offer better terms than before, they might consider returning to Council oversight. Our intelligence suggests otherwise, Sylvian said. Human leadership appears to have moved far beyond the point where Council membership would be attractive. They now command resources and territories that dwarf our own. They have allies whose technologies make our achievements look primitive. Most importantly, they have built a civilization based on voluntary cooperation rather than imposed authority. She paused to let this sink in before continuing. Humans do not want better treatment from the Galactic Council. They want the Galactic Council to become irrelevant. The implications were staggering. For 3,000 years, the Council had been the ultimate authority in their region of the galaxy. They had never imagined that any species could simply choose to ignore their power and build something better on their own. There must be something we can offer them, Corvanus insisted. Territory, resources, favorable trade agreements. Every species wants something. Ambassador Mira spoke softly from her position in the circle. What could we possibly offer them that they do not already have? They control more territory than the entire Council. They have access to resources we have never seen. Their trade networks generate more commerce than our entire economy. We could offer them leadership positions in Council government, suggested Council Member Hive. They have already built their own government, Mira replied, one that treats them as equals rather than servants. Why would they want to return to a system that dismissed their concerns for 30 years? The truth was becoming clear to even the most stubborn delegates. The Galactic Council had not lost a member species. They had lost control of their entire region of the galaxy. Humanity had not just left the Council. They had replaced it with something better. Outside the chamber, emergency meetings continued around the clock as government officials tried to find solutions to problems that might not have solutions. The civilization that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was discovering that their time as the supreme authority was coming to an end. They had created their own replacement, and it was too late to fix their mistake. Too late to fix it. The Council watches as humanity walks away. Part 5. The Price of Arrogance 1. Year after humanity's dramatic departure from the Galactic Council, a small diplomatic fleet approached New Geneva Station in the Sol system. The 5 council ships looked ancient and worn compared to the massive structure that dominated Earth's orbital space. The station itself was a marvel of engineering that combined human ingenuity with technologies borrowed from their new allies across the galaxy. The station stretched for nearly 50 kilometers in all directions, its hull gleaming with metals that seemed to shift color as ships moved around it. Energy fields danced across its surface like aurora lights, providing both protection and power to the millions of beings who now called it home. Docking bays designed for dozens of different alien ship types showed just how diverse humanity's new alliance had become. Speaker Thane Corvanus stood at the observation deck of the lead council ship, staring at the station with a mixture of awe and despair. In just 12 months, humanity had built something that rivaled the greatest achievements of council civilization. It was not just impressive. It was impossible according to everything the council thought they knew about human capabilities. How many species are represented on that station? Asked Economic Minister Dava Thornwick, who stood beside him reviewing diplomatic protocols. Intelligence estimates suggest at least 40 different civilizations, replied Intelligence Director Pava Silvian. Most of them are completely unknown to our databases. Humanity has made contact with entire regions of the galaxy that we never knew existed. The council delegation consisted of the 5 most senior members of the government that had once dismissed humanity as children playing at civilization. They had come to Earth not as conquerors or rulers, but as supplicants hoping to negotiate terms for their own survival. The irony was not lost on any of them. President Maria Santos received the council delegation in a conference room that offered a spectacular view of Earth below. The planet itself had been transformed using technologies provided by humanity's new allies. Cities gleamed with architecture that seemed to grow from the Earth itself. Oceans sparkled with the clean energy networks that powered a civilization no longer dependent on fossil fuels. The sky was crossed with the trails of ships traveling to and from colonies scattered across multiple galaxies. Santos sat at the head of a table made from crystallized starlight, a gift from the Spiral Federation. Around her sat the leaders of humanity's new government: Foreign Minister David Chang, Defense Secretary Jake Morrison, and Trade Coordinator Lisa Park. Behind them, holographic displays showed real-time data from the Terran Commonwealth's expanding territories. Corvanus took his seat across from the human president, his reptilian features showing the strain of the past year. The being who had once dismissed human concerns with casual arrogance now struggled to maintain his dignity in the face of complete defeat. "Madam President," he began, his voice carefully controlled, "we have come to discuss terms for humanity's return to the Galactic Council. We are prepared to offer significant concessions in exchange for renewed cooperation." Santos exchanged glances with her advisors before responding. Her expression was polite but firm. "Speaker Corvanus, I believe you misunderstand our position. We did not leave the Council to negotiate better terms. We left because we had outgrown the need for Council membership entirely." Foreign Minister Chang activated a holographic display that showed the current political situation across the galaxy. The Terran Commonwealth now controlled territories spanning 6 different spiral arms. Their trade networks generated more commerce than the entire Council economy had ever achieved. Their military alliance included civilizations whose fleets could darken star systems when they moved in formation. The Commonwealth currently includes 112 different species across 47 different star systems, Chang reported. "Our trade networks handle 60% of all commerce in this galaxy arm. Our colonies provide security and resources to over 300 independent worlds." Corvanus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Surely there is room for cooperation between our governments. The Council has experience in galactic administration that could benefit your new alliance." President Santos smiled, but it was not an entirely friendly expression. What experience would that be, Speaker? The experience of treating member species as servants? The experience of stifling innovation through bureaucratic restrictions? The experience of maintaining control through economic dependence? Defense Secretary Morrison leaned forward. Our alliance is based on voluntary cooperation between equals. Species join the Commonwealth because they see benefits in membership, not because they fear the consequences of independence. It is a fundamentally different approach to government. The Council delegation looked increasingly desperate as they realized that their former subordinates were not interested in reconciliation. Trade Coordinator Park activated another display that showed resource flow data. The Commonwealth's economic output has increased by 400% since our founding, she reported. Our industrial capacity exceeds Council levels by more than 6 to 1. Our research and development programs are producing technologies that your scientists say should be impossible. We have offers from 87 different Council worlds requesting to join our alliance, Cheng added, including several founding members of the original Council government. This was the most devastating revelation of all. The Galactic Council was not just losing influence, it was losing members to the civilization they had once tried to control. Economic Minister Thornwick attempted one last negotiation. What would it take for the Commonwealth to consider some form of partnership with Council worlds? Surely we can find common ground for mutual benefit. President Santos considered this question carefully before responding. The Commonwealth is always open to diplomatic relationships with peaceful civilizations. However, any formal partnership would require Council worlds to meet our membership standards. She gestured to Chang, who activated a new display showing Commonwealth admission requirements. Prospective members must demonstrate respect for individual rights, commitment to voluntary cooperation, and willingness to contribute to mutual defense. They must also pass economic stability reviews and cultural compatibility assessments. In other words, Morrison said bluntly, Council worlds can apply for associate membership in the Terran Commonwealth. Full membership would require approval from all current member species, including our allies from the Spiral Federation, Forge Collective, and Nomad Swarms. The reversal was complete. The government that had once set quotas for human expansion was now facing quotas on their own growth. The organization that had once dismissed human technology was now requesting access to human innovations. The Council that had treated humanity as junior partners was now being offered junior status in humanity's alliance. Corvinus struggled to maintain what remained of his dignity. The Galactic Council has governed this region of space for over 3,000 years. We have experience and wisdom that could benefit any galactic government, and that experience will be considered during the application process, Santos replied diplomatically. However, past achievements do not guarantee future performance. The Commonwealth evaluates potential members based on their current capabilities and future potential. Intelligence Director Sylviane spoke quietly. What about Council worlds that choose not to apply for Commonwealth membership? What is their future in this new galactic order? President Santos's expression softened slightly. The Commonwealth has no interest in conquest or forced conversion. Council worlds are free to maintain their independence as long as they do not interfere with Commonwealth territories or threaten member species. We believe in the right of self-determination for all civilizations. However, Defense Secretary Morrison added, independence means taking full responsibility for your own security, resources, and economic development. The Commonwealth will not provide aid or protection to worlds that choose to remain outside our alliance. As the Council delegation prepared to leave, they were offered a tour of New Geneva Station. What they saw there confirmed their worst fears about humanity's new position in the galaxy. The station housed research facilities that were developing technologies decades ahead of Council science. Its docking bays serviced ships from civilizations whose names did not appear in any Council database. Its trade centers handled commerce between species that the Council had never known existed. Most disturbing of all, they saw representatives from dozens of former Council worlds, species that had abandoned their old government to join humanity's alliance. As their ships departed Earth orbit, Corvinus sat in his quarters reviewing the day's negotiations. They had come hoping to bring humanity back into Council oversight. Instead, they had discovered that humanity had created something far more powerful than the Council had ever been. The species they had once dismissed as Emotional children had become the founders of the most successful galactic civilization in recorded history. It was too late to fix their mistake, and now they would have to live with the consequences of their arrogance forever.